We are recording.
There's no peanut allergies in the room?
No. Thank you. Got it. Got it. Riley, are you going to do introduction?
No, it's okay. You are at 4 of 13.
What time are we at?
We are at 10:01.
it is.
You want to wait one more minute to boost the number? Shall we just
Everyone else just got Riley's reminder.
Ashley Green?
Yeah, Peter.
We've met her many times, owned many of her stickers. Her art features prominently in a talk that I give regularly about the indigenous pit cooking, the roots of that plant.
Oh, everything.
This is giving news channel vibes.
But before we've gone like we're speaking about
I have 2 of her stickers on my car.
You're at 5 of 13.
I don't know enough Ron Burgundy to do a
Nothing
Ron
good.
Burgundy. We'll wait another 10 seconds. He's in the room and ready, taking notes.
Thursday. No, Wednesday. What day is it? Help out.
It's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday, October 15th.
Yeah.
Was it a weekday? I forgot that was.
It's like a Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. If you are viewing us from points unknown, welcome. And you're here because you think you want to apply or maybe nominate for somebody to apply for an internal UBC Okanagan Teaching Award. Today, you're going to be listening to the insights of a couple of people. Riley, I think you need to click in the slide somewhere so that the slide advancer works. Thank you kindly. These are your hosts today. Christine Schreier is to my right, your left.
Hello. I only pop up when I speak, so. There we
There
go.
she is. And my name is Steve McNeil. Christine is a linguistic anthropologist. I am a chemist, and we're both here because we supposedly think we know something about this. We're both winners of the Provost Award for Teaching Innovation, Excellence in Innovation, and we're both winners of the UBC Okanagan Killam Teaching Prize. And I have a couple of external awards under my belt as well. We won't be talking about those directly today, but if you've got questions about those things and how the internal awards can lead you to the external awards, we can discuss that later on. We're really going to focus our attention today on the internal teaching awards, both run out of the Provost's office. There's been in the past few years a lot of streamlining and clarity put in place around exactly the sequence intended for these awards and for whom these awards are meant to be delivered. So the Provost Award now is explicitly indicated to be an early to mid-career faculty award. We're handing out 3 of them a year now, 2 for tenure track faculty and 1 for lecturers. The nomination for those awards can come from basically anybody you know that thinks you're cool, and it comes with a $2,000 prize. I don't know if you want to read the stuff for this one.
Sure. Yeah, sure. The Killam Teaching Prize is for mid to late career tenure track faculty. I believe they are supposed to have won a previous internal award, which is part of the criteria.
It's not officially part of the criteria, but given that explicit structure that says one's early to mid and one's mid to late, and I have been in the room on the adjudication side of this, and if somebody applies for the Killam without having previously won the Teaching Excellence and Innovation Award, that raises an eyebrow.
Right.
It's not necessarily disqualifying, but like, why don't you apply for the easier one first?
Right.
And so I think now it's an unspoken but very strong recommendation that you should apply for and win the Provost Award for Teaching Excellence before applying for the Killam.
Right. Got it. And the nomination for the Killam comes from your head or your associate director or associate dean or dean, and it's a $7,000 prize.
I did not win $7,000 when I got the Killam.
Not either, no.
Okay. So we're going to be writing some letters to the provost saying, wait a minute, that is a lot more money than we remember receiving.
Yes.
So congratulations on having waited this long and them actually putting a slot of money on this that it probably deserves.
I did get a lovely pin though. Did you get the pin?
I got a pin and I got a plaque.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So not 7. There was some money, but it wasn't that much. The nice thing about these awards is they've now really sort of consolidated the process. It's the same set of forms that you use to apply them. It's the same award criteria. The contents of the package are almost identical, although there's some recognition that somebody in an earlier career won't have achieved quite as much in the 3 criteria. And really for the provost explicitly, you only have to have strong performance in 2 of the 3. They are 3 pillars that are identical for both: teaching excellence, educational innovation, and educational leadership. Those criteria are very closely modeled, and by very closely modeled, I mean stolen directly from the criteria for the 3M National Teaching Fellowship. And so, and it also parallels language that if you're an ELO faculty member, you will recognize as your tenure and promotion criteria. And so that works out nicely. You're kind of checking the same boxes for all these different things as your career progresses. There is one other thing that's down at the bottom of the rubric for these awards. You can go to the provost webpage, you can go to the Teaching Awards webpage, you can download the criteria, you can look at the scoring rubric the committee uses. And down at the bottom of it is this little yes/no question. Does the package exhibit a clearly apparent, intentional, and holistical commitment to EDIA principles? And the way that that's interpreted is that's a deal breaker. You've got to be able to check yes to that box. And if you cannot check yes to that box, then you're out of contention for the award. It doesn't matter how strong an amount of evidence you can portray for the other 3 pillars. You got to be able to make a story and make a case in the package for that holistic through line in the entire package to equity, diversity, inclusion, and the A varies depending on which version of the documentation. I think it's standing for anti-racism these days, but that vibe has to be there throughout. It was accessibility in an earlier iteration. I think this time it's anti-racism now.
Oh,
but
okay.
And you should be able to check all those boxes, obviously, but that's a sort of a separate contingency that you need to make sure is there. And I've been involved in discussions in the adjudication room where we weren't convinced that that was a really strong clue of communicated value in a package, and that was a reason that we put it aside and didn't consider it any further. So you gotta think about that. One thing that we're not talking about is we also have UC Okanagan Outstanding Instructor Awards. Those are run at the faculty level, sometimes even at the department level, and the process is different for every faculty and every department. And so we don't have any idea how you win that. Talk to your head, talk to your dean. There's a quota often at the departmental level of how many of those are handed out, and the process is left to deans and heads to make those recommendations. So we can't really help you with what the criteria or the process is there.
I would just add, I feel like they're lower subscribed right now. I feel like they're not being utilized to the best of their ability. So if you're interested in that, please do look into them, because I feel like there's more to give away.
You got a good chance because nobody knows about it.
Exactly.
And also would be, if you're applying for the provost, it's like, yeah, but I've already won the Outstanding Instructor Award once or twice. That's a nice thing to be able to
I don't think I did anything.
Somebody did something.
No, that's what I mean.
Right,
Exactly.
yeah.
Basically, in my case, John Corbett told me, oh, by the way,
We've
But
got
there was no follow-up.
right.
I didn't have to do, like, there was no application.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so often the application for that is your head or your dean tells you that you've been nominated and then you win it. And so that's nice. The process is somewhat more exhaustive on your end for the 2 major internal awards, as we will see. There are also some big external teaching awards, which we're not really going to be discussing here. But if you are on a career path where you think that these are the kinds of things that you might be in the running for, it's worthwhile thinking about that ahead of time, because you will be drawing on information and achievements that are not just the last 6 months of the last year. You're going to be sort of, by the time you get to these big external ones, you're going to be looking back at 10 years of stuff in your portfolio. And so it might be worthwhile thinking ahead. And certainly the 2 teaching awards that we have are could and should be regarded as a stepping stone toward these. The British Columbia Teaching and Learning Council has a West Coast Teaching Excellence Award. It hands it out to 5 people in all disciplines at all universities and colleges in BC and Yukon. There are team awards. That's new this year. And so if you have done something that's really cool, but you're part of a larger teaching team, There's an opportunity there. It's a pretty highly structured, very closely delineated dossier that's 20 pages. The criteria are not exactly the same languages as the ones that we use, but you can kind of see how the bits and pieces are going to map onto them. And speaking to Christine's comment from earlier, in this case, there is a very specific intended sequence, because one of the criteria for the West Coast Teaching Excellence Award is that you cannot be a 3M National Teaching Fellow. If you've already won the 3M, keep on walking, because this thing is meant to be a stepping stone toward the 3M. And so the 3M Kids Next, that goes to 10 people, but it's across the country, so the bar is much, much higher. It's another very highly structured pain in the ass dossier to put together. It's 30 pages. There are the same 3 criteria that we use for our awards. And so if you're setting yourself up to win the Provost Award of the Killam, you're well on your way to establishing a track record of the 3 pillars for the 3M National Teaching Fellowship as well. There are probably also awards in your discipline. And I like what's
So the Canadian Anthropology Society, I've been nominated for their teaching award, and I also successfully nominated Eva Marie, one of our instructors, last year. So different societies will have teaching awards.
right, and there are a couple of awards in from the Canadian Institute of Chemistry as well.
Yeah.
So you've probably got an academic disciplinary organization that probably has teaching awards at the provincial or the national level. What those criteria are, what that process is, obviously we don't know. Where that slots into sort of this path and in what order should I try for these is a national award in your discipline, higher or lower prestige or challenge rating than an all disciplinary award on your campus or at your institution. I don't know. Depends how many people there are in your discipline, I guess. I think so you've been nominated for, but
Yes.
not won yours yet.
Correct.
Well, you
Yeah.
should get on that.
I was busy nominating. So,
Right.
and they won, so I think I did a good job.
And I think I won the Killam Prize here before the CIC ChemEd Award.
So
But I might have to double check that.
I was nominated for the Canadian Anthropology one before my win of the Killam, but I had been previously nominated for
Okay.
Killam and then the
And
anthropology.
it's yours do a thing where it rolls over automatically for a certain
Yeah.
number of years. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
correct.
pretty standard.
Yeah.
Okay, so think about those, but here's your timeline for our internal awards. The intent to nominate form is November 7th. That's in 3 weeks.
Okay.
That's not too onerous, and it doesn't go past your dean or director. There's a little paragraph where you sort of summarize why you think you might be achieving this award and what you're hitting on all 3 of those pillars. The extent to which that matters depends on what faculty or school you're in. Some schools and faculties are using this as a preliminary triage, and they're only going to put 1 nomination forward to the provost office. And so the information that's on that intent to nominate form actually is the information they're using to decide where they're going to put their resources and where the best bang for their buck is and which single nomination is going to move forward. There are other faculties in schools that just take all comers and everybody moves forward, and they don't really use that form as anything other than an intent and to start planning to put together the full nomination package. If you're not sure what kind of faculty you're in, you should probably talk to your dean. And figure out how important that one little paragraph is, because it might be the thing that determines whether your package moves forward or not. Then you've got 2 weeks, at which point the dean or the director says, congratulations, your package is moving forward, or not so much, we're going ahead with somebody else, try again next year. And then after November the 21st, we've got until January. And that looks like, I mean, that's 2 whole months, that's 9 weeks, that's plenty of time, except that's also Christmas, marking, exams, starting courses in January. We're all busy in January, right? So this is actually a lot less time than it looks like. And I'll comment about that later on. The dean or director then has a week to review and sort of put some finishing touches on it, and then it gets submitted to the provost. At some point, a committee is struck in the spring term and makes a decision. And that timeline kind of hops around depending on how big the people in the provost office, how busy the people in the provost office are. But my recollection is that we sort of find out, or at least the nominees find out who the winners are in March or April-ish, and then formal announcements, I guess, at the teaching the teaching excellence ceremony in May,
early
usually.
May. Yeah.
And you also get to go on stage of convocation.
Yeah.
So the key deadlines that you're thinking about there are November 7th for the small 2-page form, and then January 9th for the full package. Here's what the full package looks like. There's a nomination form. That's nothing. That's just your personal information and a little checklist to make sure that you've included everything. There's a letter of nomination that comes from your nominator. There's a letter of support from your head or director if they are not the person nominating you. And then there's 5 support letters. At least one has to be a student, and at least one has to be somebody else at UBC who knows what you're doing. It can be more than that, but that does mean that you can have external letters if you want. If it's the Killam, you also need a letter of support from your dean or your director, which counts as one of the 5, unless they're the person nominating you, in which case they're writing the nomination letter, and then that frees up a 5th letter. So you might want to consider for the Killam getting the formal nomination from the dean, but there are pros and cons to that. You want the nomination letter to really be able to check some boxes, which require somebody who's really intimately familiar with the work that you've done, and you've written successful nominations, and I think you'll agree with that. We'll talk about some specific strategies about what ought to go in these letters and who you want to find to be your nominator in a moment. Then there's some stuff that you get to do. You can write a teaching philosophy. You probably have a teaching philosophy. You will want to rewrite your teaching philosophy for each of these awards specifically to hit those criteria. That's only 2 pages. There's a personal statement where you get to brag about yourself and explain why you've hit all of those particular checkboxes on those criteria. That's only 3 pages. You have to take your abysmal, awful, atrocious University of British Columbia approved faculty CV and whittle that thing down to 15 pages so that it just talks about stuff that's in the award. That's actually a challenge. And I would recommend not just editing it, I would recommend rewriting parts of it and really curating it so that it speaks to the criteria. And then you've got 2 pages for sort of an overview summary of your teaching evaluation data and other stuff that might be helpful there. Here's what's important to recognize. You're not responsible for most of this package, right? The support letters and the nomination letter and all that stuff, your nominator takes care of that, and you do not write that material. You might not even know who's writing those letters. You only really get your edited CV and 5 pages. And what that means is you're not going to have enough room to tell the story that you need to tell about yourself. You're going to be relying on the support letters to tell a lot of this story. And that means they have to be chosen very carefully, and they need to be set up strategically by your nominator to get the narrative across that you and the story that you need to tell.
Yes, so for the letters, I worked with people I was nominating to choose the people who the letters were for with specific criteria in mind. So we discussed, and when I was nominated as well, we discussed who would be a good choice from different levels. So you don't want all the students in your 1st year course who think you're amazing. You want to have a graduate student, somebody from an upper year course for the students, a 1st year student, colleagues that know you're teaching really well from your subdiscipline of your discipline versus your head. And so choosing who those people are so they can speak to different aspects is really important as well.
And make sure that they've received specific directions to speak to specific aspects. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So here's some helpful tips, I think, both from the point of view of people that have written winning award packages, who have nominated and helped pull together winning award packages, and from the perspective of people on the other side, on the committee side, who have looked at packages both strong and not so strong. First tip: start earlier than you think you need to. No, earlier than that, like today would be good. You've only got 5 weeks. 9 weeks over Christmas to secure 5 support letters, and that's going to be a big ask. It's going to take you a lot of time, and you need some downtime to reflect and to plan and to make sure that your teaching philosophy statement and your personal statement, your CV are all working together to tell the correct story. This is not something you're just going to be able to bang out in an afternoon. So I would suggest starting now without waiting for the feedback from the dean and the assurance 2 weeks after you submit your NOI that you were going to go ahead with it. I would start talking to a nominator and planning some of this out like right away, because that 9-week period is going to disappear really quickly. If you start today, you've got an extra 3, and that probably lies. And also, I will say, as somebody who's rewritten his teaching philosophy statement far too many times in the last 12 years, it's always a worthwhile exercise. Just that pause and reflect and look back and go, oh God, 4 years ago, this is what I thought, that's all wrong. And realizing I have so much more to say and to think about and to include in those kinds of documents there, it's worth kind of giving yourself the kick in the pants to update this stuff, I think. And if you're anything like me, that's the kind of work that doesn't get done unless there's a deadline on it. And so applying for these awards is always, for me, it's always been a nice, the gate is slamming, you have a deadline, you need to think about your philosophy again. Which is really the only reason that's been working for me. A second thing to think about, you're not just you're not writing this for people in your discipline or your faculty. The people that are on the adjudication committees for both the internal and the external, they're faculty members from across campus or across the province or across the country. There are often students included in that adjudication committee. On our campus for our internal awards, there's support staff. So like there's somebody from the library or somebody from the Learning Hub. There are other people who also are student facing, but are faculty members. And so they're people with very different jobs than yours, and they're people who are not in your discipline. And so if there are specific disciplinary contexts that are relevant to what constitutes excellent teaching in your discipline, what constitutes innovation in your discipline, what does educational leadership look like for the people who do the kind of scholarship that you do, that needs to be in the package. You need to explain that because they're not going to know that if you don't. We're very, very transparent with our internal awards about what the criteria are. They're listed on the webpage. We're very, very transparent about the rubric. You could download that rubric, and it's the same document that the adjudication committee is going to be working with. Read those criteria, read the bullet points listed in the criteria, read the scoring rubric. They're quite broad, actually, in terms of the examples of this is what we think excellence means, this is what we think innovation means. You're not going to be able to meet all of those examples. You don't have to. What I would suggest you do is you look at your achievements in the classroom and your achievements in educational leadership, and pick 3 or 4 themes, and then see how they plug into examples of each of those rubrics, and start mapping out what you're going to talk about where in the portfolio. But I would also recommend that whenever possible, you organize the documents with subject headings that match the criteria, and that whenever possible, you mirror the exact language in the criteria. Again, so the people not in your discipline don't have to interpret what you're saying. You're hitting them over the head and telling them that you're hitting the criteria because you're using the exact same language in the criteria. You want to make it really, really easy for them to check the boxes, right? Here's what teaching excellent looks like. It looks like scholarly teaching and inclusive practices and ongoing reflection. Use those words so they can just check the box when they read those words. Here's what educational innovation looks like. Use those words, check those boxes off when they read those words. Here's what educational leadership looks like. Use those words so that they know that they can check those boxes. You're trying to get 3 out of 3 in every category so that we can have a lively discussion about who our favorite is. If you can't convince them to check all the boxes to give you a 3 in a category, then you're going to be you're probably going to wind up in a baby pile. So don't mask your outstanding achievements and your alignment with the criteria with your own flowery, florid prose. Be very direct and make it very easy for them to find the information that they need.
And share the award criteria with your letter writers as well. So especially for the students, because they may not know how to structure a letter. And so looking at the criteria of innovation, leadership, all the ones that are listed there will be helpful for the students also, and giving them suggestions on those topics, or your nominator can, because they're the one who will be speaking mostly to the letter writers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's also very, very important. Here's a framework. This may not work for you. This is a framework that I've always used for my teaching applications that I find really, really useful. And it helps me get a sense of where I am in the narrative and the story that I'm telling. And it gives me a sense of which aspects of the portfolio, which elements of the portfolio are doing particular things. And I try to adopt this kind of a hierarchy. I think about why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. What do I value? I think about what it is that I'm trying to achieve, the goals that I'm chasing because of those values. I think about the strategies that I employ in pursuit of those goals. I think about sort of the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month tactics, the things that I'm bringing into specific classes, for example. in pursuit of and to embody those strategies. And then I think about the outcomes. And ultimately, the outcomes are probably the most important part. What are the impacts of all of this? But there should be a narrative thread that runs through this. Remember, I told you that I believe that this thing was important in my teaching philosophy statement? Well, here's the strategy that I pursue in my curriculum development and my pedagogy in order to achieve and to fulfill that value. And then here's what I do in individual classes in pursuit of that strategy. And my students and my colleagues say that that's working and doing what I intended. You want sort of some narrative threads to run through this entire thing. Not all parts of the portfolio are going to support each of these levels in the hierarchy, but if you break them out and map them onto the different parts, you can focus your attention on, right, here's what I need to be saying in the teaching philosophy. I've only got 2 pages here. I'm not going to talk about impacts or specific classroom activities in my philosophy statement. Philosophy statement is broad strokes. There are other places in the portfolio where I'm going to be able to drill down and get more specific. Again, this is a hierarchy that I found useful. It's not written into the criteria or anything, but because you've got a limited number of pages, I think it's useful to be able to sort of draw a little map for yourself and bin out. I need to say this, and I need to say this, and I need to say this. There has to be a continuous narrative theme that runs through them all. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to fit into these packages? Particularly once I got to these larger, more rigorously structured packages for the external awards, this kind of organizational scheme was really, really useful for me. But you've got connections back and forth between all of these elements, right? You've got your 3 or 4 key narrative threads. So, and something to keep in mind is the page counts here. You do have some aspects of this portfolio that are limited to a specific number of page counts. For reasons that I do not understand, there is no page limit on the support letters of the nomination letter. That's unusual. I recommend you take advantage of that oversight. There's nothing that says the nomination letter can't be 4 pages. And if your nominator has enough to say that you can't fit into the rest of the package, then it balloons out to 3 or 4 pages, and that information is all useful, then by all means do that. You can sort of overflow into the support letters and the nomination letters in a way that you can't with some of those external awards. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say on the EI data summary, for mine it was tables, so I showed progression over time from the courses. So I had a series of courses, I picked a few, and then I also strategically used little bubbles explaining how things have changed or why something was lower at a particular time, and how I had then changed that for the next time I taught the course. So even though that is generally like charts with numbers, you can also add commentary in strategic ways on that data summary.
And what's important here is that the parts that you're writing simply are not going to be able to speak to the entirety of the file and the entirety of the criteria, particularly the parts that you're writing are not the place to talk about the impacts. You want your students and your colleagues to be speaking about impacts. And so keep that in mind, that there needs to be compelling evidence and impacts on all criteria, but no one support letter is going to be able to do all of that, nor should it. And so as Christine said earlier, work with your nominator to give specific instructions to your letter writers so that the letters are complementary, not redundant, that each of them is doing a really good job speaking to a specific subset of the criteria. So we get the complete holistic story once I've read all 5 letters. But that means that they need a copy of the rubric and they need to know exactly which elements of the criteria they're speaking to. No one letter is, except the nomination letter, is really going to be doing pointing to all of those. What's also really helpful for the nomination letter is to direct the reader to other points of the file. Pull quotes from the support letters, outstanding tactic. Specifically saying, well, you know that this person has achieved this criteria because, as you can see on page 12 of their CV, and as you can see from this student says in this letter, this is apparent. And as you can see from their teaching philosophy on page 8 and in their personal statement on page 10, this is apparent. And so if the nominator is doing a lot of the organizational and lifting for the reader by pointing their attention and making sure that they see something really important, that's a really useful strategy as well, I think. Over and over and over again, when I've asked advice and been involved in conversations of people that either have won these awards or have been responsible for the creation of the criteria for these awards, or have been on adjudication committees for these awards. There's got to be a good story. This can't just be a list of achievements in bullet point form. We're looking for a narrative. And if you're gunning for one of these awards, then you need to be willing to acknowledge the fact that you're really good at this, right? You're outstanding. When you started your career, you were not outstanding. So something changed, right? You're better now than you used to be. Now you're excellent. You didn't start excellent. What have you done to make you excellent? That was a lot of hard work. And frankly, you weren't being really highly pressured to do that, probably. You made some deliberate choices to become excellent, and they have been continual, and they have reinforced themselves, and they have been ongoing. What were those changes? Why did you make them? What have the outputs been? There's a story there. And more than anything, these sorts of awards and the adjudication committees for these awards are compelled by stories, by really gripping narratives that show this is somebody who is really, really good and is always working to be better and has done these amazing things because of these choices that they've made. If your teaching excellence criteria include things like professional development opportunities and improvement to your practice because of reflective feedback, and looking at what students have told you and then making changes, and reading the SOTL literature and then making changes, like all of those things tell a story of you starting from a place of being really good and being really passionate, but progressively getting better and better and better. And that's a narrative that needs to be apparent somehow in the file, even though you're restricted to these page limits, and even though you're restricted to this very structured sort of format for the thing. And so here's an example. You read a paper or you saw a talk and you went, oh, that's a really good idea. I need to make a change. And so I went back to my classroom and I did make a change, and then I measured a thing, and then I know I got better. And then I gave my own talk about it, and other people saw that talk, and now they've adapted this innovative thing that I've done, right? That's a progression across your career and across your roles as an educator and an innovator and then a leader. And so those kinds of arcs need to be manifest in the file. We want to see that kind of evolution from that starting point to that development to those ultimately educational leadership outputs that come up the other side. And so you want that thread to run through the document. That thing that compels you, that value that you hold, that should be in your teaching philosophy statement. The personal statement is an opportunity for you to describe why you invoke these changes and the innovations and the teaching strategies that you've adopted. Your curated CV, and again, I'm using that word deliberately. I think this should be a curated document, not merely an edited down document. Rewrite parts of it to make these narrative arcs apparent. Talk about those professional development events, talk about the conferences that you attended, talk about the milestones of the innovations and the teaching practices and when you changed them. Talk about the educational leadership or the SOTL outputs or whatever it is that you're doing on that side to have an impact on the practice of other people. And then if you got a support letter and somebody, well, yeah, I saw them do this thing, or I saw them do this in that class, and now I've adopted their teaching resources or their book or whatever it is, then that sticks the landing on the outputs and shows that you're a leader in your educational community and playing those kinds of roles. There are opportunities, again, to map out the different components of the document. This arc, this narration, this story of you, which is the really compelling thing for the adjudication committees, I think.
I would agree. And the narrative about how you've changed for the better. For the personal statement is kind of where I did a lot of that work. And you probably had peer reviews of your teaching done. You do have the student evaluations of teaching. And so I quoted things from those to show how I changed over time. So, I really worked on my hybrid teaching after COVID, and my peer review of teaching person said this about that. And then students in 3 different classes said this about my hybrid teaching. So showing how, you can use those quotes. It's a little cherry picking to pull the quotes, but it is important for your personal narrative while you're focusing on these particular things.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Because you won't have comments from the students anywhere else. You only have the data, right?
Right, yeah, no, the internal awards, we don't do the thing where it's include a complete set of comments
Yeah.
for 2 courses or something, which you often see
Exactly.
in other awards. So, but that kind of thing is so important and allows the different parts of the file to continue to reinforce those narratives. I think that's really good. And so, here's an example for my CV, right? This isn't the little blurb that I have. There are those little free form paragraphs that you get at the beginning of each of the major sections, right? Throw out the one that you have, rewrite it for this. So this is what a little teaching blurb that I've used. It's not the one that is in the normal version of my faculty CV, but what this particular special interest and accomplishments bullet point timeline shows you is a stepwise series of the development of a bunch of different things. And the reason this is there is that there are like 4 major narrative threads that run through my teaching application, word application package, each of which exemplifies a specific value and a specific goal that was articulated in the teaching philosophy statement. I'm going to use these molecular visualization tools. I'm going to use these active learning strategies. I've developed these interactive videos. I've used this contextual learning strategy in my courses. And each of those things is highlighted in this little bullet point chronology. So you can see this development over, God, that's 20 years. Man, I've been a long time. Of an evolution from where I started toward dipping my toe in the water and then firing on all cylinders and then achieving these more important things toward the end. Where on each of these 4 things that I was developing through the entire package, you can see how I'm taking these iterative steps, moving forward to different things. There are other parts of the CV that listed a series of professional development events or CTL workshops that I attended, and I refer to those, right? You don't want to be presenting information where you say in your teaching philosophy statement that you really value diversity and inclusion, and then point out that you attended this workshop talking about inclusive teaching, and you never mention it anywhere else. It's not clear that you ever did anything about that. It's not clear that you've measured any impacts from any changes that you make to your teaching practice. That's a great big gaping hole, and the committee is going to spot it, right? If you set something up, you got to pay it off later. If you say you went to a PD event and you learned something, you need to come away from that PD event having made a change to your teaching practice and thought about it, and then seen what the outputs of that were. And so make sure the stories that you're telling have a beginning and a middle and an end. And really close the loop on those narratives using each part of the package to the best you can. So there's sort of a summary and a recap. I think.
Can you go back?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, this looked really overwhelming to me when I saw this. So mine looked nothing like this. So I just want to reassure you in case you haven't, constantly changed the way you write exams or anything. Mine curated CV had other things. So one of the key parts of mine was community engaged teaching. And so I had a whole section on teaching I had done not at the university or in community or workshops I had led for the First Peoples Cultural Council or at Squatcheen First Nation. So and that was a through line in all of my information. And also another piece that I really curated for my CV was guest lectures. So early on, I had like 1 guest lecture a year. And by the end, I get 3 or 4 people inviting me to do guest lectures. And so what does that say about my teaching? So when I looked at Steve's here in this slide, I went, oh, I didn't do any of that. So if that's overwhelming for you, there's other ways you can curate your CV as well that kind of speak to the things that you're doing.
Yeah. So start earlier than you think you need to, probably, if you're like me, that kind of reflection and that kind of coordination and organization of the file can take a while, and this is a 2.5 month period at a very busy time. So get started earlier than you probably think you need to. Make sure you have an understanding that your audience are people from outside your discipline and are often not even faculty members, and so you need to explain why what you're doing is innovative and important, and convince them that what you're doing is innovative and important. Organize that portfolio strategically. Make sure that you're telling a narrative arc on a bunch of different threads that are mapped out, and that you see that each piece has been assigned a particular location of that portfolio. use every page to develop those narratives very, very consciously and strategically. A lot of that is going to be you communicating with the nominator and the nominator passing explicit instructions onto the support letter writers to make sure that they understand you're speaking to these criteria of this idea because you are a person who's in this classroom or you are a person who has adopted these learning resources. Make sure that everybody is telling the part of the story that they need to tell so that the entire story emerges, and just get that narrative arc. You're outstanding. You're excellent. You weren't always that. You began as merely a teacher, and then you were an innovator, and now you're a leader. And we want to see that evolution and what compelled that evolution. And if you can do that, then the committee walks away believing that that's a really strong story that deserves recognition. Other thing to keep in mind, there are a lot of people who apply for these things, 2 or 3 times before they get it, because we have a lot of really great people on this campus. It's gratifying to see that they've now expanded in a meaningful and an explicit way the number of awards that we're handing out. I remember being in the committee a couple of times and we're just sitting there going like, I know we're only supposed to give away one of these, but we can't make a decision. And then the provost would go, fine, there's 2 of them. And we would just like, we did that 3 years in a row and then just decided that maybe there should just be 2 of them. And so we've got more of these than we did have before. That's nice to see. I think the opportunities for a team-based award at the BC West Coast Teaching Excellence Awards is really, really interesting. That's something to think about as well. And so don't be too discouraged if you apply and don't win the first time. That happens to a lot of really excellent files.
I was going to say that both of these awards that I've won, I was nominated twice. And it was the second time that I won. So definitely. And it is considered, they're held and considered again, or they're not doing that anymore.
I believe what happens is that if you apply and you don't win, you're given really exhaustive feedback. Laura's really good at that. She makes sure that there's very specific recommendations and suggestions from the committee that they can pass along to the applicants. And then they keep it all on file. You're allowed to update stuff.
Yes, right.
And they ask you if you want to be considered again. So like there's a little bit of a back and forth. It doesn't just happen automatically. But you can apply more than you can apply more than 1 year.
Right. And I didn't get that feedback. So I think that's new and it's great that Laura's doing that. Early on, we didn't get feedback. And so it can be kind of, intimidating again because you have to, convince yourself you're excellent. And it's hard to write about yourself, but then others will convince you to do it again. And so it's worth it because you reflect over time and you're still doing amazing teaching and you have more to add. And so between my first Killam nomination, I was nominated the year Steve won. So he beat me that year. And then he convinced me to come back and be nominated again, but it was about 5 years apart from that time.
That was wild.
Yeah. So there was that piece as well.
That's actually, and I think that's something I didn't put on the slides. I think that's actually also a really important thing to point out. And I don't know who I'm talking to through this little anonymous camera.
Except for Katie.
Yeah. But Christine has just expressed a sentiment that I have heard echoed from a lot of different people, not just for our internal awards, but at BC West Coast and for 3M. People that have won these awards and had to be dragged kicking and screaming into the nomination process because they genuinely didn't understand and believe that what they were doing was innovative. They didn't believe that what they were doing was excellent. They didn't know until somebody else saw it and went like, oh my God, you have so cleared the bar for this thing. We need to nominate you for this award. And really? I don't know. I'm not sure. It's like, no, shut up. We're doing this, and hold them into this process. And I know a bunch of people that have won our internal awards, but also the bigger external national awards who didn't know that what they were doing was operating at that level until somebody pointed it out to them. So this is not a time for your imposter syndrome bullshit. This is a time to brag about how amazing you are, and let other people do it on your behalf, which is like, for me also, that's the harder part. I'm bragging for myself, I can do all day long. It's other people also expressing similar sentiments that makes me uncomfortable. You got to put that aside because you've done excellent stuff and you deserve to be acknowledged and rewarded and seen for that. So yeah, if it takes somebody coming and kicking you in the pants saying, why haven't you reapplied for this? You should do this. Please do.
The other thing I would say, just as someone who is now at the level where I review tenure files or other files for promotion, or even within our own department, having these on your CV, like even a nomination. So even if you didn't win, I definitely had nominations going up for different levels, promotion, and those were mentioned in the letters. And when I write letters and I see someone has a teaching award, no matter what it is, the other thing is to remember the Golden Apple Awards, the I Am Accessible Awards. Those are all pieces that can be put in. So those are things people comment on for job applications if you're applying elsewhere, but also for, you know, the different promotion and tenure pieces of things. So, yeah.
And even on a more general level, I've found that the process of putting together application packages for these things, the process of helping other people put together nomination packages for these things, particularly if you're in the educational leadership stream,
Yes.
the criteria for these awards are your promotion and tenure
Yeah.
criteria. So you're helping yourself write information that you're going to need to use for career progress anyway. You know, being nominated for these awards, winning these awards, obviously those are great lines on your CV, but the act of going through the necessary reflection and writing and thinking about this stuff in order to apply for these awards is actually a really good use of your time, because it helps you clarify what your own narrative is, and you're going to have to put that narrative into your tenure and promotion file. And so from that perspective, I think there are additional there's additional value added in the time and energy that it takes to do this, which is really worthwhile. All right, we've lathered on enough. We've got some time for questions, though. You two both need to run off in about 10 minutes time. So if you've got questions for Christine specifically, we might want to front load those, Riley. But I got nothing else going on today, so thanks for hanging around. My morning's clear. So do we have any questions from the viewing audience at home, assuming there are any still left?
There are some still left. People did have to run for 11 a.m. activities. Someone's turned on the camera. Laura, I think if you unmute, we should be able to hear you here.
Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear.
Thank you so much. This is so incredibly worthwhile hour of my time to be at this.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
I have a question I think Christine will probably be able to speak to about the nomination process. Like how the department or head decides who to nominate. I feel like often I hear conversations about it's just whoever's going up for tenure and promotion is going to be nominated. And is it sort of like that, or is it more merit-based, the decision of who to nominate?
Yeah, so in ours, we have often decided amongst anthropologists, so Laura is my colleague in anthropology, strategically, you know, who is going up for tenure and who is more likely. And sometimes, you know, there's more merit-based, or we know that someone is doing something really innovative and amazing, and so we've gone with that person. So amongst us in anthropology, we kind of decide, you know, who's, what are people doing merit-based, but also the timeline of people going up for tenure. So I don't know if even within CCGS, if different disciplines are doing it differently. I don't know about in chemistry or other places. So I think it really depends on the department and the program of that department.
You know, have that communication with your head if there are sort of those strategic decisions being made in the background. Not every department and every faculty operates that way. And keep in mind that for the Excellence in Innovation Award, you can then run that system. Like the nomination can come from a student. The nomination can come from the person in the office beside you. For that first award, that doesn't have to go through a head or a dean. It would be helpful if there were a support letter from those people. But the nominator is much wider open for that initial award, and so you can go ahead and run those channels if you feel that somebody doesn't think that it's your turn yet. But yeah, at that level, it really is the cultures of how that works, I think, vary a lot from discipline to discipline on this campus. We've certainly seen. No, I remember we've had successful winners where a group of students got together and put a nomination together, and so that's unusual, but there's precedent for that.
It's funny though, because I don't remember any conversation ever in geography
About why?
anything, right? But we're in the
Right.
same department.
Yeah, so it's
But
program
just different.
specific.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other online questions?
Just a lot of very kind thank yous and supportive words for you.
Thanks.
And more people have emailed saying, can you please send the recording? I can't make it, than people have shown up. So
Great.
people are looking forward.
And
to
cleverly, we have recorded this.
Yes.
And obviously, as per usual, probably best to go through Riley, but they'll have a copy of the slides. And so if you you watch the recording afterwards, but if you'd rather have your own digital copy of the slide deck, let us know and we can pass that along.
Another thing I often do and have for grants, for my own students, if they're applying for grants, but also for myself, and we have this for grants, right? We have Spark and you have different examples of successful grants.
Right.
So I share my my portfolios with people. I shared my Killam one with Bowen, who won last year. So it is good to see models, to see how people have written it. And I feel like I'm happy to do that. I don't think the provost office is currently holding any models, but I
No.
do. So if you are thinking of nominating someone or not getting nominated, then please let me know and I'm happy to share my portfolios. with
Actually,
you.
yeah, that's an excellent point. I should have put that in the slides. The complete winner, the complete list of everybody that has ever won any of these awards is on the provost's webpage. If you can find somebody in a discipline that's close to yours that has previously won the award that you're going up for, send them an email and ask them for a copy of the file and they'll give it to you because why wouldn't we?
I don't even think it has to be a discipline like Bowen's in computer science. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, true,
it
that's
doesn't
true as well.
matter. I think it's the way you write it and,
Yeah.
and you won't write it exactly the same at all. You're going to pick and choose, but just to see how someone else has written.
I think, yeah, that's a really, really good idea. There's no point you trying to reinvent
Yeah.
a wheel that you haven't seen before. We have models of what successful packages look like and what they're doing. So ask to see a couple of examples to give you some ideas.
Mhm. And especially ones more recently, because the criteria has
That's
shifted
very
over
also
time.
true.
So if you ask someone who won in 2009, the Provost Award, it's completely different what they submitted. So thinking about more recent ones too.
Seems like an awful lot of work. to put together.
It's a lot of work, but it's work that probably you should be doing anyway. And particularly that continual reflection piece, right? I mean, that's such a big part of this. And you know, you wouldn't, if you're a traditional disciplinary researcher, nobody would take you seriously if you weren't up to date on the papers that have been coming out in your field in the last couple of years. If you're trying to present yourself as an educational leader and an excellent instructor, and you haven't thought about what you're doing in any of your courses for a decade, why should anyone take you seriously? You know, continually reinventing that philosophy piece and continually reinventing an understanding of what it means to be an outstanding instructor and an educational innovator. I think that's really important. And like anything else in our job, it needs to be a continual process. You're always progressing, you're always improving. You know, every time I've applied for one of these awards, I looked at the teaching philosophy statement I did in the last awards package and laughed at it because there was like, but there's this brand new shiny thing that's so important. How did I not know that 4 years ago? I think that's a really important, worthwhile piece of this. And so thinking about these stepping stones and progressing through these could be a really.
Can I stop that part?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that part I see.
Oh,
I did more the strategic nomination letter,
Yeah.
that part of the coordination, that, you know,
Right.
say.
But you don't do that, right? You give names
No,
to people
but
and then
just
they kind of reach out to them.
Yeah,
I would say when I've written them, I haven't totally scrapped everything and I haven't necessarily left myself. I think my early one, there are things that continue on. Like I have had enthusiasm as one
Right.
of my core principles of
Oh, sure.
teaching philosophy throughout the entire
some
thing.
part
you know?
remains.
Some part remains. So it is
But-
like you have some stuff.
oh
already,
yeah,
right?
it's not so much that, like I said, it's not
It's
so much
the
that,
other-
like the
yeah.
personal reflection side, like, yeah, I mean, I can sit down and do that sort of stuff, but I guess it's just
It's getting other people.
the
to say
other
things.
people are,
Right. Yeah.
seems overwhelming. so.
Mhm.
And figuring out, particularly figuring out how to take your CV and getting it down to 15 pages so that it tells the story that you need to tell for this.
I don't think
That's-
that's 50 pages anymore.
Yeah.
That was a challenge for me, I remember.
Yeah, no, that was for sure.
I clarified that actually. I think I looked at the criteria. It used to say explicitly that it is your UBC faculty CV.
Yes.
And the stuff that was on the webpage a month ago just said CV. And so I actually wrote Laura and I went like, any CV?
Right.
Can we throw away? She's like, no, it's the assistant thing. It's like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
No more questions from the chat, just more thank yous and kind emojis. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Huzzah.
Thank
All right, well, thanks for viewing,
Thank you,
everybody. I hope you all found that useful. And if you got any further questions, if questions that occur to you in the next 3 weeks, for either one of us or anybody else, please let us know. When in doubt, you can just email Laura Prada, who runs this whole operation out of the provost office, and she will be happy to answer specific procedural questions if you've got them as well.
Actually, I have one more sort of, I guess, strategy question.
Okay.
And still, I'm still on the fence about all of it, but one piece of strategy that I'm thinking about is, of course, need a letter from the student.
Right.
And like this, so last year I had a lot of like 300-400 level classes, so I feel like I had more people like that I could draw from there. Whereas because I'm like, well, maybe I'll wait till next year, just for a lot of different reasons. But I'm teaching 5 sections of Introduction to Human Geography this year, so I won't have like a good pool of students that I could reach out to, knowing that a lot of my recent students who could write meaningful letters are going to be going. So yeah, that's that. So it's sort of like, what piece of the strategy game am I playing?
Right. They can be people who have recently graduated. If
Okay,
you ask
that could
them,
be okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
That's-
or even if they've graduated a few years ago,
Yeah,
or,
okay.
So that's fine, as long as you have the ability to contact
Okay,
them.
yes, so that could be a current student.
No.
So that could make a bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Or both. There's nothing that prevents you from getting
Yeah,
kind
some
of a
of them
cross section
I
there.
was-
And I think that could be very, very powerful, having somebody who was in a 3rd-year class with you, was in a 4th-year class with you, is 2-3 years up from graduation and has had now time to sort of
But I
reflect on their
Yeah.
own beginning of their own career, and went like, oh my God, that was so important, that transformative experience I had in this person's class. With the hindsight of somebody who's now left the
Okay.
university, that can be really powerful.
But also if you are, like for me, I was teaching multiple levels, right? So I said I got students from multiple levels. If you're teaching all 1st-year students and that's what you're focused on and that's where your leadership is in pedagogy, and we need you to do that and we're all so grateful for you, then that is something different that's going to be in your package, right? So
Yeah.
so I don't think that's an issue either. Because especially for the lecturer side of things is
Yeah.
a little bit different.
Yeah, exactly, right, and that's why I'm like, we did 15 page, I'm like, I can't imagine because we're not made to research, there's no part of our job that is research as much as some of us do.
Here we go.
Anyway, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.